Welcome to the Early Night Show with Anway Pramanik.
The sexiest early night show on the internet with the sexiest host on the planet. Welcome to another episode of Early Nights with Anway Pramanik. If you've noticed, I'm still sometimes confused about what to call this podcast. Anway Pramanik's Early Night Show or Early Nights with Anway Pramanik. Both work fine according to me. Anyways, that's a separate conversation to be had separately. If you're joining in, then as usual, I'm going to ask you to get yourself a drink ready, whether that's an alcoholic drink or non-alcoholic drink or just a glass of green tea. Have it ready and you're going to have that much more of a comfortable time going into this episode, I guess. I've got a glass of cold water. I've noticed that I don't drink as much water as I should. I've noticed that on the days that I drink a lot of water, my stomach hurts less and my head hurts less after a day of hard work. That truly goes to show that water is such an important thing for us. I mean, it's very underplayed. Just finished watching season 1 of Vikings. I wanted to watch season 1 because there's a lot in leadership that you can learn from Ragnar Lothbrok in season 1, especially with his non-interfering way of dealing with people. I think I did a podcast on this a while back called Leading Just Like Ragnar. Today we are in podcast number 16, I think. Not sure which episode this is, but whatever. We're here today. And it's a slightly important podcast for me. And I'll tell you exactly why in a few moments, going a little deeper into this discussion. Today's conversation is going to revolve around this one statement. I remember, I don't know, I remember reading it somewhere or do I remember hearing it somewhere? Basically, it said that it's not so much about the fact that it was actually, I think, by a fitness guy, okay? And his entire fitness journey started with eating good food, healthy food, nutritional food, balanced food, planned food, rather, if I should put it. And he said this one thing, that it's not so much about you taking a cheat day or it's not so much about you breaking the routine as it is about how long it takes for you to come back to the routine once you've broken it. I'll repeat that once more. It's not so much about breaking the routine as it is about how much time you take to get back to it once you've broken it. I mean, see, there are two kinds of... Building a routine is like building a habit, right? You're building a routine so that at the end of you having this kind of a consolidated routine in your lifestyle, you have a habit at the end of it as a byproduct of having a routine like this. There are two kinds of habits that we have, right, that we can build. One is your habits that are based on immediate gratification, like eating junk food or eating desserts or playing video games or watching a TV show or, like randomly opening up your phone. Or if I have to give you very specific examples, it would be things like eating a dessert. For me, habits that have immediate gratification, which I've easily picked up, are watching something on my phone before sleeping, eating a dessert while I'm doing that, smoking some weed in the middle of the day. These are habits that I don't need to put effort into doing because the reward is so instant and so gratifying. I'm compelled to do this habit. And then at the same time, you have these delayed gratification habits like doing it. If I do 1 hour of workout a day today, I'm not going to feel much at the end of the day, maybe a little more focused, a little bit more energetic, metabolism increased. But I will see the actual effects maybe 6 months, 8 months, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 3 months, some time from then. So it's a delayed gratification event or a delayed gratification habit. For me, it's very difficult to fall in line with a delayed gratification habit simply because I need the instant gratification. So for me, I'll give you an example. I'm doing this 16th podcast today, almost a week, maybe 2 weeks after my last podcast, episode 15. I broke the habit of doing a podcast every evening, and it took me almost a week to bounce back from it. Right? But at the same time, as I was building this habit of, or at least building this routine of taking a shower in the evening, brainstorming in the shower what I want to talk about, coming out of the shower and then doing the podcast, then eating a Snickers and then watching something on my phone and crashing. That's how I'd slightly build the routine. What happened is, even though I was not doing the podcast, I was still having my Snickers. For the first 3 days, it was fine. I was like, okay, cool, it's fun. 4th, 5th, 6th day, it started, something started in the back of my head, started speaking up to me, I don't think I deserve this Snickers right now, kind of a thing, So yesterday, day before, and the day before that, I didn't have any Snickers. But today, I'm going to have a Snickers because I'm doing this podcast. I'm going to only see the gratification from doing these podcasts maybe once I'm 50 episodes in, have maybe 1,000 followers, 2,000 followers. That's the only time I'm going to get gratification from doing this podcast. I mean, the kind of gratification I'm looking for, wherein I can use this podcast to leverage and talk to people of high influence who I want to talk to. That is when I'm going to get the maximum gratification. Yes, of course, there is a sort of freedom that I get when I come and speak. But the gratification from that isn't as much, because I think at any given point of time in my mind, I am quite free. I like to be quite free thinking my thoughts. This is a place where I have to come and document those thoughts. And for me, documenting my thoughts is a little bit more of a chore than thinking it. So that's why I need to reward myself once I document my thoughts, which is what this podcast is about. So it's very easy for me to think shit. I love thinking stuff, when I take these gaps in the middle of me speaking on this podcast itself, I'm thinking of things. I love doing that. But documenting it and working on it is something that is delayed gratification based. So I need to have something instant gratification that will drive me to do that delayed gratification. It's a little complex, it's a little fucked up, but if you're someone who's as lazy and as indisciplined or as obnoxious with routine as I am, you're gonna want to tame yourself in certain ways by tricking yourself in certain ways. So basically I realized that, me building a podcast is delayed gratification. Me rewarding myself with the Snickers is the instant gratification. They have to both work side by side. The instant gratification is going to drive me to do the delayed gratification and vice versa. So that's when I truly started realizing, that as much as I can't wait for the day when this podcast becomes a source of instant gratification for me, like what is going to be a source of instant gratification for me is if this podcast allows me to travel the world. I think I've discussed this before. The instant gratification I'm going to get, or that might become a delayed gratification when I reach there, but there is absolutely no way for me to get instant gratification from doing this podcast. Maybe few stories, few views on my stories, but even that is so shallow, it fucks me up in the end of the day. So the only gratification I'm going to get from this podcast is on the day when I'm like, you know what, I want to interview this person, I'm going to interview this person, and this person is going to say, yes, I will come for this interview because you've built a track record of doing interviews on this podcast. It's a serious podcast, it's a legit podcast. That person who I want to interview wants to spend their time on this podcast. That's when I will get gratification. So right now I'm delaying any gratification from this podcast to reach that point where I can, get that kind of gratification. So right now I have to work my ass off to build a certain track record, following, and you could say a track record and a following for this podcast that I can use to influence bigger decisions, better decisions. Someone's making a little noise upstairs, I think. And that's why I think I need that instant gratification. Maybe there's another question here of, is my mind really that weak that I cannot do without an instant gratification? Maybe I am. Maybe I am that weak. Maybe I am that soft. Maybe I need to build that. Maybe I need to strengthen that. Like David Goggins very rightly says, it is about strengthening the mind. He says this one thing, right? That listening to music while doing exercise is like using crutches. Because if you've noticed, a lot of us, when we do exercise, we kind of zone out from the exercise and we focus more on the music. When the music is there, the support of the music. So David says this, like, what happens, motherfucker, when the music is gone? Are you not going to work out? Are you going to find it that much more difficult to work out? So he says that, and it really strikes with me. So every time I eat a Snickers bar, I ask myself, can I do a podcast without having a Snickers? And maybe that can be my next challenge, but it's fun. I like these moments when I'm aware of what it's doing to me or what excuses I'm making, because of a lot of times the justifications that I make for myself are just excuses to support my self-limiting beliefs. So as I was telling you, it took me 7 days to come back from breaking that routine of the podcast. So it took me 7 days to come back and make the podcast again. That's awesome. There would have been a time when I would have come back maybe 3 months later. And that's speaking from experience. I mean, the last time I stopped making vlogs, it was almost 6 to 8 months before this. So it took me 6 to 8 months from then to come back and start making podcasts again. And here it took me, the first time I took a break was after episode 8. Came back after a week, or 2 weeks, continued again. And now it took me a week to take that break. So this is where me and my homie Preetham, we had come up with like a theory called achieving a baseline. Baseline is, if I have to put it, baseline is if we have to do something, what is the SOP? Like a baseline is basically like, it tells us that my standard operating procedures for anything is going to be at that level. Like for example, it could be my financial baseline. At any given point of the time of the month, I'm always having that much money, my physical baseline. At any given point of time, I can run 1 kilometer, swim 500 meters, do that, do this. My mental baseline, at any given point of time, I'm able to remember this, focus this, meditate on this, whatever. So baseline basically says that at my lowest performance level, I'm going to at least have this level of operative capacity. I'm not sure if I made sense right now. I could open up the internet and explain it to you. I mean, that would make more sense, I guess. But like, imagine a peak and two peaks. And in between the two peaks, you have a valley. These two peaks are the highest level of function that we can do in a day. Like, for example, my peak performance in a day is when I write an article, I do a podcast, I finish my normal office work, I talk to some people, I go out, play some basketball, I smoke less weed, I play a video game, I do 20 things. So those are my peaks. There was a time when my baseline used to be my cheat baseline, that valley, when I want to cheat in a day, when I don't want to do anything, that baseline would be something like maybe I'm doing only 0 activities. So from 10 activities in a day from my maximum performance, I've come down to 0. Now from 0, again, I have to climb back up to 10. Now the next time when I fall down from 10, I mean, you have to fall, you have to break we will break our routine at some point in time. If I break it, do I fall back to 0 or do I fall back to doing 2 tasks a day? What's that new baseline that I achieve? So I'll do 2 tasks a day. That's my new baseline. From 0 tasks a day, now I've come to 2 tasks a day. At least I will do 2 tasks a day, even on my cheat day. Or on my lazy day, or on a day when I fucking give up. Then I climb up to the peak again on my best day on a Wednesday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm fucking performing at 10, 11, 12. Maybe that baseline is also increased. And then again, I've fallen down. But instead of falling down to 2, this time my baseline has gone down to 4 or 6. It's increased. Similarly, say my peak for recording a podcast is doing 1 a day. So in a week, I will do 7. And my baseline for not doing anything is in a week, I will do 0. Right? The 7-day break that I did. Or just before that, I'll have a peak of where I'm doing so much in a day, 1 a day. And suddenly for 30 days, I take a baseline of doing none a day, 0 a day. And then again, I come back to doing 1 a day. My baseline, my efficiency line increases. So in this case, the new baseline I'm trying to achieve is from 30 days, can I bring it down to maybe 7 days? So I do 1 podcast a day, 1 podcast a day, 1 podcast a day, 1 podcast a day. Then I break my routine and I have a 30 days baseline. But the next time I come back again, do 1 podcast a day, 1 podcast a day, 1 podcast a day. Then again, I break my routine. But instead of doing a 30 days baseline, I do a 10 days baseline, 10 days cheat baseline. It takes me 10 days to come back. Again, after the end of those 10 days, I'm doing a podcast. That baseline will also increase. So last time I did 7 days continuously in a row. This time I will do 14 days continuously in a row. Then suddenly I'll have to break my routine again and then baseline, the slump baseline. So now instead of 10 days, I'm taking 5 days off. After the 6th day, that baseline will also increase. So last time I did 14 days in a row. Now I'm going to do 25 days in a row. So that is how this habit formation works, I feel. That is how maintaining a baseline in life works. Because I honestly believe that I don't want to live a life where I'm working my ass off till I'm 40 and then chilling for the rest. No, I want to have a life where I'm chilling and working my ass off every day for the rest of my life. I've always wanted to have that balance and baseline. Anyways, that's a separate conversation. But in this, I wanted to have... So this podcast was twofold. It's about 2 kinds of habits, the delayed gratification ones and the instant gratification ones. And how long, and if for these delayed gratification habits where the routine keeps breaking for me, how long does it take for me to come back? What is the new baseline I'm establishing every time I fall down and break my routine? So again, like I said, it's not about skipping a day in the routine or it's not about breaking the routine, but it's about how soon you can come back. How much does your baseline keep changing? How much does your baseline keep upgrading over and over again? And that's something I've very strongly believed in. This was a nice podcast. Nice one. Let's see what it says. Baseline is online. Baseline for habits. There is a nice baseline habits. Minimum baseline. Interesting. Anyways, I've been playing this new board game called Scythe. Scythe. It's a award-winning board game. 2015 tabletop game of the year, and it's by Jamie Stonemeyer Games. Jamie Stegmaier. I was explaining this analogy to my CEO the other day. I told him that when you snort cocaine or when you do MDMA, if you look at a canvas normally and you see there are 1,000 colors and 1,000 details, when you do MDMA or coke, it becomes like 10 million colors and 10 million details, right? So imagine creating a game like Monopoly but on cocaine. So instead of having 5 things to do each round or 1 thing to do each round, you have 6 things to do each round. Instead of predicting where I'm going to be 6 rounds ahead, you have to predict where you're going to be 25 rounds ahead. I absolutely love the game. I've bought it on Steam right now, the digital version. I plan on getting the board game someday. And maybe I'll have a podcast with Jamie Stegmaier. What's his name? Stonemeyer Games CEO. Jamie Stegmaier. Yep, Jamie Stegmaier. Found him. You never know. You never know. I might just get an invite to, I might just want to do a kick-ass podcast with Jamie. He's got a bunch of board games on his Instagram. Anyways, I'm gonna end this podcast here. I would say thank you for being so awesome and joining this podcast. Oh, he plays Stardew Valley. Alright. Stardew Valley, an amazing game. Another amazing game. Anyways, thank you so much for joining me, guys. Hope you had an amazing, fantastic time. Hope this was a fun podcast. I hope it gave you a little insight into how you could probably use instant gratification habits to build delayed gratification routines, and how you can understand over time what your new baseline is. If you ever want to have a conversation with me on this, feel free to drop me a text. I might not get back to you and give you a full 10-hour sermon, but I'll definitely link you to things that I have used to learn myself. Thank you for joining me. This has been a fantastic episode. I hope you finish the cup of that liquid that I asked you to pour yourself in the beginning of this podcast. I just finished my water. So, thank you for joining me. Have a great evening. Have a great night. Give your loved ones a kiss from my end. And say hello to a life full of adventures and possibilities tomorrow. It's the start of a new week, a new Monday. It's almost like pressing the F5 button on a shitty day or a shitty week and starting ahead. So, have a great time ahead, guys. I'll see you soon. Good night. Bye-bye. Much love. Shanti and bye.